There are moments when all we need is to pause for a little while, take a deep breath, and allow ourselves to open up as calm and clear as a stilling surface of water. If you've arrived here, consider this an invitation to step into a different space, a place where every pressure can be set down, every noise can fall away, leaving only you and the gentle quiet waiting to be discovered. Here, we don't need to force ourselves to know everything. We only need to be present. Each word, each breath, each sensation is a doorway leading you toward the ease and peace you truly deserve. Stay for just a few minutes. Who knows, you might find what your heart has been quietly waiting for all this time. Tonight, in the quiet space between wakefulness and sleep, let us practice a very old, very simple art. The art of not forcing. Not the empty abdication of action, but an intelligence of softness, an ability to move and act without the tightness of effort, without the grinding friction of will against what is. This is the way of effortless action, a way both ancient and practical, found in the sages of East Asia and practiced by those who learn to watch water, wind, and bamboo with attention. Before we begin, if you like, tell your body silently what time it is where you sit, what room you are in. Notice the chair under you, the floor beneath your feet, the clothes on your skin. There is nothing to fix. There is only this moment and your willingness to notice it. The word often used for this in classical texts is wu wei, sometimes translated as non-action, sometimes as effortless action. It points to a mode of being in which the movement arises naturally from the situation rather than from the raw force of ego. It's not passivity. It is responsiveness without coarseness, to act when action is appropriate, and to yield when yielding is wiser. Think of water moving around a stone. It does not wage war on the rock. It finds the opening, the path of least resistance, and over time, patient and continuous, it shapes even stone itself. This way of moving through life is not only poetic, it is practical, and it invites a body that is relaxed rather than clenched. Encyclopedia Britannica. Close your eyes if that's comfortable. Let your shoulders soften. Feel the breath move at the bottom of your ribs, not because you force it, but because the breath, like water, knows how to move on its own. There is a difference between working hard and working with skill. The first exhausts. The second preserves energy and directs it precisely. Listen to this story of an archer. A master of the art, he would draw and release arrows with a calm precision that seemed to belong to the air itself. Arrows flew true and landed at the heart of the target. People traveled long distances to watch him. There was a young man who admired him, who practiced until his arms were calloused and his fingers numb. He pulled the bow with strength and concentration. He put everything into each shot. And yet his arrows wavered, veered, missed. "What am I doing wrong?" the youth asked. The master invited him to try. He took the bow, drew with all his strength. The arrow wobbled and fell wide. The master smiled and said only this: "Not so hard." He guided the young archer to feel the bow rather than dominate it, to breathe into the shot, to soften the jaw and allow the shoulder to release when it was ready. The second time, the young man's hand opened and the arrow sailed true. The lesson is simple. The body knows how to perform when we cease to override it with tight will. This is not a demand to be passive. It's an invitation to trust the intelligence of skill that arises when tension is released. This intelligence is not mystical. It can be studied. When you are holding tension and in your jaw, your shoulders, your belly, your field of attention narrows and your performance suffers. When you soften, attention widens. You become more present. This is why artists describe a state of flow when their highest work arises with ease. The arrow goes straight not because you have muscled it there, but because your alignment and breath have become a single, coordinated movement. We see the same principle in the kitchen. An old cook who once had cut with force and worn his knives down learned over years to read the grain of a piece of meat. He stopped trying to force his blade through resistance and instead found the natural separations. The space is already present. The knife then moves with the meat. The cook moves with the tool. Mastery, he discovered, is not the accumulation of brute effort, but the cultivation of a sensitivity that lets you follow the material truth of the moment. In the experience of waking life, most of our suffering comes not from the events themselves, but from our relationship to them. We push and pull, trying to shape what won't be shaped, clenching at outcomes we can't control. The practice of Wu Wei asks a different posture: to act with presence, to respond without clampdown. Instead of forcing the mind into submission, let it be like the calm surface of a pond that reflects the sky. Each breath is a small lesson in this. Notice how much tension drops when you stop forcing and simply observe. Why practice this tonight for sleep? Because the body and mind that are gripped, that carry repeated effort and friction, do not rest easily. An anxious mind recycles stories. A tight body holds stress like a store of heat. Scientific studies of mindfulness and meditation show measurable improvements in sleep quality for people who practice meditation approaches that cultivate present moment attention and reduce rumination. Over and over, research suggests that training in mindful awareness reduces the cognitive loop that keeps you awake, lowers symptoms of insomnia, and improves overall sleep satisfaction. In other words, slowing the mind and easing the grip is not just an ancient metaphor. It has observable benefits for the nervous system and our nightly restoration. Jam a network, so in the next minutes we will practice moving with less force. We will listen to stories as mirrors, and we will try a few simple invitations. To feel rather than to push. To sense the breath-guiding movement. To wait for the natural release rather than manufacture it. Imagine yourself as the archer who for the first time stops trying so hard. Imagine the knife finding the seam. Imagine water finding a path. Begin by settling your weight. Notice the points of contact where your body meets your seat. Breathe in slowly through the nose. Let the belly soften and the breath find the base. Exhale without any effort, letting the shoulders drop a small degree on each release. If thoughts come, and they will, treat them as clouds passing over a wide sky. You do not need to chase them away. Simply return to the gentle feedback of body and breath. If it helps, picture a river at dusk. The surface is not glass. It has small ripples. Stones beneath slow its speed in places, but the river simply flows around them. There is no forceful collision, no struggle to dominate. See how patient and persistent the water is. It is both calm and unstoppable. That patience is not laziness. It is the steady application of intelligence. Now try a small movement exercise. Raise your hands slowly as if to draw a bow. Feel the weight of the limb. Feel the breath naturally accompany the lift, not forced, but present. Notice any tightness in the shoulder or jaw as you hold the hand in space for a few heartbeats. Breathe. Allow micro-relaxation to happen in the muscles. Lower the hand and notice the difference between the moments you were holding and the moments you let go. The letting go did not reduce your ability, it sharpened it. This state, engaged but not clenched, is what the old teachers pointed to when they said, "Be like a puppet on strings and yet move with your whole presence." In practice, this means being attentive and responsive without gripping outcomes. It is the middle way between apathy and aggression. Tonight we will carry this through the rest of our journey. We will meet the images of bamboo, cooks, ferrymen, and stones, and we will notice where in our life we are forcing and where we might practice yielding. We will experiment, breathing into tightness, softening, and seeing what changes. You do not need to accomplish anything besides noticing. Curiosity is the proper posture, not the harshness of judgment. Take one more breath here, slow and measured. As you exhale, allow a small permission into your system. You do not have to make the night perfect. You only have to practice easing your grip for this one breath. If your mind resists, simply note it. Resistance. Then return to the river image, to the uncomplicated truth that water finds its way without wrestling. Tonight, in the quiet space between wakefulness and sleep, let us practice a very old, very simple art. The art of not forcing. Not the empty abdication of action, but an intelligence of softness. An ability to move and act without the tightness of effort, without the grinding friction of will against what is. This is the way of effortless action, a way both ancient and practical, found in the sages of East Asia, and practiced by those who learn to watch water, wind, and bamboo with attention. Before we begin, if you like, tell your body, silently, what time it is where you sit, what room you are in. Notice the chair under you, the floor beneath your feet, the clothes on your skin. There is nothing to fix. There is only this moment and your willingness to notice it. The word often used for this in classical texts is wu-wei, sometimes translated as non-action, sometimes as effortless action. It points to a mode of being in which the movement arises naturally from the situation rather than from the raw force of ego. It's not passivity. It is responsiveness without coarseness, to act when action is appropriate, and to yield when yielding is wiser. Think of water moving around a stone. It does not wage war on the rock. It finds the opening, the path of least resistance, and over time, patient and continuous, it shapes even stone itself. This way of moving through life is not only poetic, it is practical, and it invites a body that is relaxed rather than clenched. Encyclopedia Britannica. Close your eyes if that's comfortable. Let your shoulders soften. Feel the breath move at the bottom of your ribs, not because you force it, but because the breath, like water, knows how to move on its own. There is a difference between working hard and working with skill. The first exhausts, the second preserves energy and directs it precisely. Listen to this story of an archer. A master of the art, he would draw and release arrows with a calm precision that seemed to belong to the air itself. Arrows flew true and landed at the heart of the target. People traveled long distances to watch him. There was a young man who admired him, who practiced until his arms were calloused and his fingers numb. He pulled the bow with strength and concentration. He put everything into each shot. And yet his arrows wavered, veered, missed. "What am I doing wrong?" the youth asked. The master invited him to try. He took the bow, drew with all his strength. The arrow wobbled and fell wide. The master smiled and said only this: "Not so hard." He guided the young archer to feel the bow rather than dominate it, to breathe into the shot, to soften the jaw and allow the shoulder to release when it was ready. The second time, the young man's hand opened and the arrow sailed true. The lesson is simple. The body knows how to perform when we cease to override it with tight will. This is not a demand to be passive. It's an invitation to trust the intelligence of skill that arises when tension is released. This intelligence is not mystical. It can be studied. When you are holding tension, in your jaw, your shoulders, your belly, your field of attention narrows and your performance suffers. When you soften, attention widens. You become more present. This is why artists describe a state of flow when their highest work arises with ease. The arrow goes straight not because you have muscled it there, but because your alignment and breath have become a single coordinated movement. We see the same principle in the kitchen. An old cook who once had cut with force and worn his knives down learned over years to read the grain of a piece of meat. He stopped trying to force his blade through resistance and instead found the natural separations, the spaces already present. The knife then moves with the meat, the cook moves with the tool. Mastery, he discovered, is not the accumulation of brute effort, but the cultivation of a sensitivity that lets you follow the material truth of the moment. In the experience of waking life, most of our suffering comes not from the events themselves, but from our relationship to them. We push and pull, trying to shape what won't be shaped, clenching at outcomes we can't control. The practice of Wu Wei asks a different posture, to act with presence, to respond without clampdown. Instead of forcing the mind into submission, let it be like the calm surface of a pond that reflects the sky. Each breath is a small lesson in this. Notice how much tension drops when you stop forcing and simply observe. Why practice this tonight for sleep? Because the body and mind that are gripped, that carry repeated effort and friction, do not rest easily. An anxious mind recycles stories. A tight body holds stress like a store of heat. Scientific studies of mindfulness and meditation show measurable improvements in sleep quality for people who practice meditation approaches that cultivate present-moment attention and reduce rumination. Over and over, research suggests that training in mindful awareness reduces the cognitive loop that keeps you awake, lowers symptoms of insomnia, and improves overall sleep satisfaction. In other words, slowing the mind and easing the grip is not just an ancient metaphor. It has observable benefits for the nervous system and our nightly restoration. Jama network. So in the next minutes, we will practice moving with less force. We will listen to stories as mirrors, and we will try a few simple invitations. To feel, rather than to push. To sense the breath-guiding movement. To wait for the natural release rather than manufacture it. Imagine yourself as the archer who for the first time stops trying so hard. Imagine the knife finding the seam. Imagine water finding a path. Begin by settling your weight. Notice the points of contact where your body meets your seat. Breathe in slowly through the nose. Let the belly soften and the breath find the base. Exhale without any effort, letting the shoulders drop a small degree on each release. If thoughts come, and they will, treat them as clouds passing over a wide sky. You do not need to chase them away, simply return to the gentle feedback of body and breath. If it helps, picture a river at dusk. The surface is not glass, it has small ripples. Stones beneath slow its speed in places, but the river simply flows around them. There is no forceful collision, no struggle to dominate. See how patient and persistent the water is. It is both calm and unstoppable. That patience is not laziness, it is the steady application of intelligence. Now try a small movement exercise. Raise your hands slowly as if to draw a bow. Feel the weight of the limb. Feel the breath naturally accompany the lift. Not forced, but present. Notice any tightness in the shoulder or jaw as you hold the hand in space for a few heartbeats. Breathe. Allow micro-relaxation to happen in the muscles. Lower the hand and notice the difference between the moments you were holding and the moments you let go. The letting go did not reduce your ability, it sharpened it. This state, engaged but not clenched, is what the old teachers pointed to when they said, "Be like a puppet on strings and yet move with your whole presence." In practice, this means being attentive and responsive without gripping outcomes. It is the middle way between apathy and aggression. Tonight, we will carry this through the rest of our journey. We will meet the images of bamboo, cooks, ferrymen, and stones, and we will notice where in our life we are forcing and where we might practice yielding. We will experiment, breathing into tightness, softening, and seeing what changes. You do not need to accomplish anything besides noticing. Curiosity is the proper posture. not the harshness of judgment. Take one more breath here, slow and measured. As you exhale, allow a small permission into your system. You do not have to make the night perfect. You only have to practice easing your grip for this one breath. If your mind resists, simply note it. Resistance. Then return to the river image, to the uncomplicated truth that water finds its way without wrestling. When you are ready, we will move into the next story. A closer look at skill without strain. The archer's release and the old cook's knife. And from them learn two practical exercises you can use tonight whenever tension rises. Let's continue our journey with a few stories, each one a mirror, showing what life looks like when action and awareness become one, when we stop fighting the flow and begin to move with it. The first story is simple but unforgettable. It's about an archer who learned to release his arrow without force, and a cook who learned to cut without effort. Both discovered the same truth, that mastery isn't about adding strength. It's about removing resistance. The archer's lesson. The young student had trained for years. His arms were strong, his stance perfect, his focus sharp. But when he released the string, his arrows trembled in the air. He could feel the strain in his shoulders, the grinding effort in his teeth. The harder he tried, the less accurate he became. One day he visited the old master who lived near the mountains. The master was calm, light in his movements, almost translucent. His eyes followed the wind rather than the target. "Show me," the master said. The student raised the bow, breathed hard, drew the string back with all his power and released. The arrow missed the mark completely. The master smiled. "You're working against the bow," he said. "Not with it," the student frowned. "But isn't that what practice is for? To control the bow?" The master shook his head. "Control is an illusion. Feel the bow instead. It wants to move, but it needs your permission to move naturally." He asked the student to close his eyes. "Forget the target, forget success, just breathe." The student inhaled slowly, exhaled even slower. "Now," the master whispered, "draw the bow, but don't make it draw. Let the draw happen." The muscles of the young man's back softened. His breath guided the motion. The bow curved into its full shape almost by itself. "Hold it," said the master. "Wait until you feel the bow wants to release. Don't decide, sense." And in that small stillness, the student felt the tension shift. From force to flow. His fingers opened by themselves as if the bowstring had taught them how to let go. The arrow flew. When he opened his eyes, it was buried in the center of the target. The master nodded. "For the first time," he said, "you worked with the bow instead of against it. The arrow found its mark not because you forced it, but because you stopped interfering." That night, the student couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the feeling of that effortless shot. It felt less like something he did and more like something that happened through him. And he realized, all the years he had practiced control, he was really practicing resistance. Now he began to practice trust. Yan too. The cook's wisdom. The same principle appears in the kitchen. An old cook worked in a noble house. His knife was ancient, its edge worn smooth, yet it cut through meat and bone as if through water. One day a younger cook watched, astonished. "Your knife glides," he said. "Mine always sticks. I have to force it." The old man smiled. "When I was young, I forced it too. I thought cutting meant conquering the meat. I went through 100 knives in a year. My arms ached every night. Then I learned to see differently." He placed the knife against the meat. "There are spaces already here, tiny paths between muscle and tendon. The knife doesn't need to make them. It just needs to find them. I let the knife show me where it wants to go." He sliced once, twice. The blade slipped between fibers, silent and effortless. "The secret," he said, is that I don't cut the meat. I let the knife cut the meat. I only guide the motion. The younger cook watched closely. He noticed that the old man never hurried. His breathing matched his rhythm. Each cut was part of a longer, slower dance. "Isn't that slower?" the young cook asked. The old man laughed softly. "No, it's faster because I never have to struggle. When you move with the nature of things, you stop wasting energy fighting what already knows how to separate." This is what the old Taoist texts meant when they said, "The sage accomplishes everything by doing nothing unnatural." Wu Wei does not mean apathy. It means working in harmony with the structure already present. In the world, in the body, in the task. Skill is listening. When you see a master at work, a dancer, a calligrapher, a martial artist, you can feel that same effortless grace. Their bodies are alive with attention, not tension. Each movement arises from listening rather than commanding. This is why Zen often says, "When you eat, just eat. When you walk, just walk." The phrase sounds simple, but it's an advanced instruction. It means that true skill is not doing more. It's removing the noise between the doer and the doing. It's the same reason a river flows without confusion. There is no mind debating how to flow. Pause for a moment now. Notice something you do habitually. Breathing, blinking, swallowing. These actions happen perfectly without your management. You can interfere if you wish, but the moment you stop micromanaging, the body continues on its own. This is the basic lesson of Wu Wei in everyday life. There is already intelligence in the system. You can learn to cooperate with it. Take another breath, deep and slow. Ask your shoulders to drop just 1 degree more. Notice the difference between telling them to relax and simply allowing relaxation to appear. The second is Wu Wei. The first is control. The masters didn't invent this principle. They observed it everywhere, in rivers, in clouds, in bamboo bending under snow. Life is always moving toward balance when we stop resisting its natural rhythm. The musician's flow, a new modern example. A concert pianist once described how, during her best performances, she no longer felt like the one playing. "It feels," she said, "as though the music plays itself through me." Neuroscientists later studied this phenomenon. They found that during moments of deep flow, whether in art, sport, or meditation, the brain's prefrontal cortex, which controls self-monitoring, quiets down. The sense of me fades, and what remains is pure spontaneous coordination. The body acts perfectly because it's no longer divided against itself. Effort becomes effortless. Zen knew this long before science could scan it. When the self relaxes, the action becomes natural. When the inner commentary stops, awareness merges with the act. This is why Zen teachers used everyday activities, archery, calligraphy, tea-making, as spiritual practice. Each one was a mirror showing how to let go of the self that struggles to get it right. A practical exercise, finding the seam. Let's try a small experiment together. You can close your eyes or leave them half open. Take a slow breath. Bring your attention to your hands. Let them rest naturally on your lap. Without moving yet, imagine you will open and close one hand. Before you move, feel the moment just before action. The impulse rising. Now let the hand open on its own timing. Notice that you can sense the exact instant when movement wants to begin without forcing it. This is the seam, the natural space where action emerges by itself. When you learn to feel that seam in conversation, in creativity, in work, you stop pushing and start aligning. You don't have to try harder. You only have to pay attention. The practice of Wu Wei is not about being passive. It's about acting from the right timing and the right energy when things want to move. Think of how a surfer doesn't make the wave. They learn to read it, to wait for the right moment, then rise and move with its power. A beginner splashes and falls. The master looks still even while racing across water. The difference is not in strength but in harmony. The modern struggle with force. In our current culture, we often glorify struggle. Work harder, we're told. Push through, never give up. These phrases can motivate, but they can also imprison. When force becomes the default response, the nervous system stays locked in fight mode. Adrenaline high, muscles tense, breath shallow. We confuse exhaustion with virtue. Zen offers an alternative. Persistence without strain. It says you can be fully committed and still relaxed. The bamboo bends in the storm. The oak that refuses to bend breaks. In life, bending is not weakness. It's wisdom. Flexibility keeps you alive. If you've ever tried to sleep after a stressful day, you know that forcing sleep is impossible. The more you try to fall asleep, the more awake you become. But when you let go of the effort, when you allow drowsiness to come on its own, it arrives naturally. That's Wu Wei again. Trust in the body's intelligence rather than domination by will. Returning to the river. Picture again the river we imagined earlier. Its surface catches the light of the moon. It flows around every obstacle, never in a straight line, yet it always reaches the ocean. That is the model for living and working. You can live that way, by noticing where your energy meets resistance and softening there. Ask yourself, where am I forcing right now? Where am I gripping so tight that I've forgotten the natural flow? It might be in your work, in a relationship, in your expectations of yourself. Now imagine loosening that grip just slightly, not giving up, just cooperating with reality. The moment you do, a little space opens, breath returns, awareness widens. This is the beginning of peace, not the peace of having achieved something, but the peace of not pushing it away. A closing reflection. The old texts often use the image of a wooden puppet. Be like a puppet moved by invisible strings, they said, not because you are lifeless, but because you move in accord with the larger rhythm. That rhythm is the current of reality itself. You don't create it, you join it. Tonight, before sleep, you can practice this in small ways. If you notice tension in your thoughts, in your body, don't command it to leave. Simply notice, breathe, and let the body unwind on its own. If you find yourself chasing an answer, chasing rest, chasing control, stop and remember the archer. Remember the cook. Remember that the most skillful movements in life are the ones that arise from listening, not from struggle. As you breathe now, allow your awareness to widen like the river widening toward the sea. Feel the edges of your body blur slightly, a sense of space around you, soft and open. You are not the controller of this flow. You are part of it. When you wake tomorrow, you will still act, still work, still move through your day. But perhaps you will remember this. Not all progress requires strain. Sometimes the gentlest approach carries the greatest strength. Let me add a companion vignette. A jazz saxophonist who, in interviews, always described the best solos as someone telling you a secret. The secret, he said, happens when intellect stops being a director and becomes an instrument. The mind that narrates, "Now I'll add a flourish, now I must show them," interrupts the flow. The musician who listens hears the space and fills it. He becomes a channel, not a contractor. Neuroscience calls that task-induced deactivation of the default mode. Your inner critic calms, and the body's learned patterns execute with fluidity. That neural quiet is not laziness, it's precision. Add a practical exercise for performers and creators. The 1-minute unfinished practice. Choose a familiar gesture, plucking a guitar string, drawing a brush stroke, saying a line. And do it for 1 minute with the instruction. Stop right before satisfaction. That brief friction trains you to release before the reflex to force, to let the action complete itself. Over time, your nervous system learns to trust the seam where action becomes effortless. Another modern framing. Athletes use eccentric control training to make movements robust and relaxed. A weightlifter learns to lower a load slowly, letting muscles yield rather than slam. The same principle applies to emotional weight. Lowering rather than forcing release builds structural resilience. So when the old cook let the knife show him the way, he was building subtle bodily memory of yielding and guidance. Your practice is the training of that memory. Close this extension with a story of teaching. A novice teacher pressed to win her students with clever arguments. Her mentor asked her to teach in silence for a week, to set up the room, light a candle, and let students speak. At first, she was terrified. No performance, no spotlight. But in that silence, she learned the most powerful lesson. That presence communicates more than content. Students changed more from being seen than from being taught. That quiet influence is a direct derivative of Wu Wei. Authority without force. Some nights the wind rises without warning. It sweeps through the valley, bending trees, shaking rooftops, whistling through cracks. If you listen closely, you can hear two different songs. The song of things that resist and the song of things that yield. When the wind grows strong, the oak tree stands proud and unmoving. Its trunk is thick, its roots ancient, its posture defiant. Nearby, a cluster of bamboo bends and bows. The stalks lean almost to the ground, whispering in the dark. When morning comes, the oak lies split and broken, its branches scattered across the field. The bamboo, still bowed, slowly rises. It straightens with the dawn and sways gently again. The oak was strong but too proud to bend. The bamboo was soft but wise enough to survive. The paradox of softness. This old fable from Asia isn't only about plants, it's about people. About how we meet the storms of life. We often think strength means firmness, the ability to stand one's ground, to resist pressure, to endure. But there is another kind of strength, quieter, subtler, often invisible until tested. It is the strength of yielding. The philosopher Laozi once wrote, "Nothing in the world is softer or weaker than water, yet nothing can surpass it in overcoming the hard and strong." Water, like bamboo, yields without losing its essence. It bends, adapts, and in doing so, it outlasts stone. When we apply this to human life, we begin to see. Rigidity is not stability. Flexibility is not weakness. In truth, it is the flexible mind and body that can navigate change, not the one frozen in its form. The science of flexibility, modern neuroscience, supports this old wisdom. The human brain, it turns out, is not a fixed structure. It is neuroplastic, constantly changing, rewiring, adapting to experience. When we hold rigid beliefs or refuse to adapt, the brain locks into narrow pathways. Stress hormones rise, creativity declines. But when we allow softness, openness, curiosity, willingness to shift, the brain releases dopamine and serotonin, the chemicals of flow and well-being. Softness isn't just a moral idea, it's a biological advantage. In the same way, muscles that stay too tight for too long eventually tear. The strongest athletes are not those who strain every fiber, but those who can yield at the right time, who know how to rest, recover, and align with gravity. In martial arts, this principle is everything. A skilled practitioner of Aikido doesn't meet force with force. They redirect it. They blend with the attacker's energy, turning aggression into emptiness. Softness, they say, is the art of not being where the blow lands. This is the same wisdom the bamboo teaches, resilience through yielding. A story of the fisherman. Once there was a fisherman who worked on a turbulent river. He had an old wooden boat that creaked and leaked, yet it had carried him safely for decades. One day, a young traveler asked him, How do you manage to steer in such a wild current? The old man smiled. I don't steer against it, he said. I listen to it. I watch the ripples, the color of the water. I let the current tell me where it wants to go. The river teaches me how to move. The traveler, impatient, scoffed. That sounds like doing nothing, the fisherman chuckled. Doing nothing wrong, he said. The river does most of the work. I just cooperate. Later that day, a storm rose suddenly. The traveler who had rented another boat tried to row against the current. His arms burned, his breath tore from his chest. His boat spun, overturned, and he barely escaped to the shore. Meanwhile, the old fisherman floated calmly downstream, his oar dipping lightly now and then. He reached the same destination, soaked but smiling. Effortless doesn't mean careless, he said when they met again. It means aligned. Softness in daily life, softness in practice begins with awareness. Notice how your body reacts when something unexpected happens. An argument, a piece of bad news, a small failure. Most of us tighten. The jaw locks, the chest closes, the breath shortens. This is the oak within us. Now try this. The next time tension arises, pause. Breathe slowly and consciously. Ask yourself, can I yield here? Not surrendering to defeat, but loosening the grip just enough to see the bigger picture. For instance, when someone criticizes you, instead of defending immediately, you might listen first. When a plan changes suddenly, instead of fighting the change, you might adapt. When tiredness arrives, instead of pushing through, you might rest and trust that clarity will return. Each small act of yielding protects your energy. It keeps you from breaking. The bamboo bends hundreds of times a year, and each time it rises taller. This is the rhythm of growth. Not straight, but circular. Not through force, but through flexibility. A meditation on the bamboo. Let's take a few minutes to practice softness directly. Close your eyes. Imagine a bamboo forest around you. Tall, green, alive. The air is cool. The sunlight flickers through moving leaves. Each stalk sways with the wind. None of them resist. They move together like a single breath. Now imagine you are one of them. You can feel your own flexibility, a spine that bends, a breath that flows through you. The wind picks up, stronger now. You don't fight it. You move with it, graceful, steady, rooted yet yielding. As the wind subsides, you rise again, no harm done. This is what resilience feels like. It's not the absence of struggle, it's the art of movement through struggle. Take a slow breath in, exhale with the thought, I bend but I do not break. Repeat it softly to yourself like a mantra, I bend but I do not break. Let that sentence settle into your body. Feel your muscles release their hold, your face softening, your chest expanding. Every exhale is a small surrender to the truth that life flows better when we stop resisting its motion. The strength hidden in gentle things. Many of the world's great teachers understood this paradox. The Buddha taught karuna, compassion, as a force stronger than any weapon. Jesus said, "The meek shall inherit the earth." Laozi spoke of the valley, low and receptive, as the most powerful form of earth. Gentleness is not weakness, it's the highest form of intelligence. It knows when to step back and when to step forward. It acts from understanding rather than impulse. Think of water again. When it meets a wall, it doesn't stop. It gathers, deepens, and finds another way. It may seem defeated for a time, but in patience it prevails. It wears down mountains without ever raising its voice. In your own life, you may face walls, moments where plans fail, where others misunderstand, where health or fortune wavers. Remember the bamboo and the river. You don't have to conquer everything today. Sometimes simply not resisting is enough to let transformation begin. Unstods, a story of the potter. A potter once told his apprentice, "Clay is stubborn. If you fight it, it cracks. If you listen, it shapes itself. The apprentice tried to rush the wheel, spinning fast, forcing the clay upward. The vase wobbled and collapsed. The potter smiled. Slow down. The clay is telling you its pace. When the apprentice matched his breathing to the rhythm of the wheel, the clay steadied. The vase began to form perfectly. The potter whispered, "That's it. You're not molding clay, you're dancing with it." Everything in life is like that. When we stop trying to dominate, a rhythm appears. The mind finds its natural tempo. The world starts to cooperate again. This is the strength of softness. It restores relationship between you and reality. Practical reflection. Take a moment now to notice, where in your life are you being the oak? Where are you refusing to bend with yourself, with others, with circumstance? And where could you practice being the bamboo instead? Maybe it's in a conversation you've avoided, or a plan that's no longer working, or the way you speak to yourself when you fail. What would it feel like to yield a little, to breathe and let the wind move through you rather than fighting it? Write this somewhere if you wish. True softness is not surrender, it's the shape of wisdom. Let it remind you that even as you work hard, as you dream and strive, you can do so without breaking. You can live with firmness in purpose but flexibility in method. That is the art of the bamboo, rooted, resilient, and free. Closing visualization. Before we close this part of our journey, let's return to the image of the forest. The wind rises again. The bamboo bows. The sound is like breathing. In and out, in and out. You too are breathing. You too can bow and rise again. This is not weakness, this is grace. Each storm that passes through your life is a teacher. Each difficulty invites you to practice balance, between strength and surrender, between standing tall and learning to bow. Remember, the oak's pride was its undoing. The bamboo's humility was its salvation. Choose the path that lasts. Take one final deep breath. Exhale slowly, as if releasing the need to control every outcome. Allow yourself to feel flexible, awake, at peace. When you're ready, we'll continue to the next part, timing and the ferryman, where we'll learn that sometimes softness is not only about bending, but also about waiting, knowing when to act and when to drift with the current. Expand the bamboo metaphor into community life. Imagine a team meeting. The rigid leader forces a plan through and burns out people. Decisions become brittle, and the project fractures. Contrast this with the leader who listens, softens, and adapts. That leader looks weak in memos, but strong in outcomes. Organizations that practice flexible governance, decentralization, iterative feedback, psychological safety, consistently outperform authoritarian ones. It's a social-level bamboo. Add a short clinical note. Chronic rigidity correlates with elevated cortisol and systemic inflammation. Conversely, practices that increase psychological flexibility, mindfulness, cognitive reappraisal, down-regulate stress markers and improve recovery. So the bamboo's advantage has measurable physiology. It literally heals faster. A new short story. A violinist practicing a difficult passage paused to breathe instead of gritting his teeth. On the 10th try, he found not only a cleaner phrase, but a sonic warmth he'd never achieved with brute force. This is the microeconomy of softness. Beginners often try to outmuscle their limits. Masters refine their edges until power is graceful. Close with a 3-step micro-practice for flexibility. Pause at the edge of tension and label it tightness. Breathe into that label for 3 breaths. Make the smallest movement in the opposite direction of the tension. Drop shoulders, loosen jaw, unclench fingers. Do this 3 times a day and you train your body to prefer yielding, not breaking. If you sit beside a river long enough, you begin to notice its moods. There are moments when the surface is calm, mirror-like, reflecting clouds and trees without ripple. And then, without warning, the wind comes, the current quickens, the water darkens. A wise ferryman knows both faces of the river. He doesn't fight the current when it's fierce, and he doesn't drift aimlessly when it's still. He reads the signs, the eddies, the patterns of foam, the angle of sunlight, and he acts when the time is right. The story of the ferryman. Once there was a man who lived by the great river. He earned his living by ferrying travelers from one side to the other. He had no clock, no schedule, no written plan. He simply watched the river. If the water ran too high, he waited. If it fell too low, he waited again. When the level was right and the current steady, he launched his small wooden boat and rowed across. Smooth, effortless, safe. People often mocked him. You could earn more if you worked all day, they said. He smiled. I could also die faster, he replied. The river decides when I cross. Years passed and the ferryman grew old. The villagers noticed something remarkable. While other boats had been lost to storms or rocks, his little vessel remained whole. He had never capsized once. They asked him his secret. He said simply, "The secret is timing. I don't row harder, I row wiser. The river teaches me patience, and patience always brings me home." The lesson of timing. In the old Taoist writings, timing is called shi, the natural moment when conditions align. It's not about waiting passively. It's about sensing the energy of the situation and responding when it ripens. A farmer knows this truth. He doesn't pull the shoots to make them grow faster. He waters, waits, and trusts the season. If he plants too early, frost kills the seeds. Too late, the sun burns them. Everything in life has its rhythm. The body, the mind, the heart, the world. When we act out of sync, we struggle. When we act in rhythm, things move almost by themselves. The modern world often mistakes impatience for ambition. We hurry everything: growth, healing, success, even rest. But the deeper intelligence of life is cyclical. Inhale, exhale, day, night, tide in, tide out. When you listen to that cycle instead of resisting it, action becomes smoother, more precise, more alive. The psychology of waiting. Modern psychology calls this dynamic patience, a state in which you are attentive, ready, but not restless. It is not the same as laziness. It is active stillness, like the ferryman's alert watching, or a cat waiting to pounce, completely relaxed yet completely aware. Research shows that when the brain is forced to make constant premature decisions, it floods with cortisol, the stress hormone. But when you allow time for things to unfold naturally, your decision-making improves. Intuition becomes sharper. Creative insights appear spontaneously. This is why so many Zen masters answer questions with silence. They are not ignoring the student. They are letting the moment mature until understanding arises on its own. In this way, timing is the bridge between Wu Wei, effortless action, and wisdom. Wu Wei teaches us how to move. Timing teaches us when. A story of the bamboo cutter. In another old tale, a bamboo cutter worked in the forest each morning. He knew exactly when to cut. If he cut too soon, the stalks were brittle. If too late, they were tough and dry. He learned by watching the moon's cycle. A few days after the full moon, when the sap began to recede, was perfect. He cut only then, and his bamboo never cracked. A young helper grew impatient. "We could double our harvest if we work every day," he said. The cutter smiled. "Yes, and double our waste. The moon and the bamboo already work together. Why disturb them?" Later, when the impatient helper left to start his own business, he cut daily and lost half his crop to rot. Timing, the master knew, cannot be rushed. It is not laziness. It is alignment. Practicing stillness and readiness. Let's bring this lesson into practice. Sit comfortably. Imagine yourself standing beside the river, the same river the ferryman crossed. You can hear the water moving, sometimes slow, sometimes strong. You hold a small wooden oar. There's no hurry. You're just listening. Breathe slowly. Inhale through your nose. the sound of water rising. Exhale through your mouth, the sound of water falling. Now imagine there is a moment when you sense now is the right time to move. You don't decide it intellectually, you feel it. You place the oar gently into the water and push off. The boat glides effortlessly. You are not fighting, you are cooperating. This feeling of timing meeting readiness is the center of flow. Athletes, artists, lovers, and sages all know it. The moment when everything aligns and action becomes natural. You can't manufacture this state, but you can prepare for it by being awake, calm, and patient enough to notice when it arrives. The dancer in the pause. Consider a dancer. To the untrained eye, her movement seems continuous, but in truth it's made of countless pauses. Tiny still moments between gestures when she listens to the rhythm and waits for the next beat. Without those pauses, the dance would be chaos. In life, the same is true. Without the pause, without listening, our actions lose rhythm. We rush, we stumble, we miss the invisible music beneath events. The ferryman's patience is like the dancer's pause. He waits for the right beat before he moves. He doesn't control the river's tempo. He joins it. Learning from nature. In nature, nothing rushes, yet everything is accomplished. The sun does not hurry to rise, yet the world warms. The tree does not hurry to grow, yet its roots deepen each season. The tide does not hurry to return, yet it always finds the shore. You too can live this way. When you feel rushed, pause. When you feel pressure to decide, breathe. When you are unsure, to listen longer. Timing reveals itself to the quiet mind, not the anxious one. The ferryman knew this. He knew that the river's intelligence was older than his own. He didn't need to dominate it. He only needed to be awake enough to notice its signals. That's the art of wisdom, awareness instead of control. A meditation on the moment. Let's meditate briefly on the rhythm of time. Close your eyes. Bring awareness to your heartbeat. Don't try to slow it. Just feel its rhythm. Now notice your breath. Each inhale has its own duration. Each exhale its own end. You don't need to count. Your body already knows the right pace. Between inhale and exhale, there's a tiny gap, a stillness. Stay there for a second. That pause is where timing lives. When we hurry, we miss this pause. When we listen, we find it. And in that stillness, clarity appears. That's the same stillness the ferryman felt before he pushed from the shore. It's the same stillness before a musician begins a note, before a painter touches the brush to canvas, before a seed breaks open in the dark earth. Every act of creation waits for its own perfect moment. Patience is power. In modern culture, patience is underrated. We equate speed with intelligence, output with value. But deep intelligence often moves slowly. An old Zen saying goes, "When nothing is done, nothing is left undone." It doesn't mean we stop acting. It means we stop forcing. We act when the time is ripe, no sooner, no later. This is how nature operates, how art endures, how wisdom matures. Think about your own life. Is there something you've been pushing? A result you want too fast? What would happen if instead of pushing you waited and watched? Not abandoning it, just allowing space for the right timing to appear. Maybe the relationship needs time to breathe. Maybe the project needs silence to ripen. Maybe you need rest before the next action reveals itself. Remember, the ferryman didn't sit idle out of fear. He waited because he trusted the river. A story of the archer revisited. Let's return briefly to the archer from earlier. After learning to release his bow effortlessly, he faced a new challenge, knowing when to release. In his eagerness, he often shot too soon or too late. His arrows missed, not because of tension, but because of timing. One day, his master said, "Don't release when you want to. Release when the arrow wants to." The student practiced for months until one evening, while breathing with the wind, he felt a subtle moment, a click in the rhythm of the world, and his fingers opened without thought. The arrow flew true again. He understood at last. Effortless action must meet perfect timing. Together they form the art of living. Practical reflection. Take a moment now to reflect. Where in your life might you need to wait instead of push? Where might you need to act instead of hesitate? Wisdom lies not in one extreme or the other, but in listening for the right moment. The natural intersection of readiness and opportunity. You can ask yourself each morning, what is the river asking of me today? Sometimes it will say row. Sometimes it will say rest. Both are sacred. Closing visualization. Imagine now that you are on the river again, the oar in your hands. The surface is calm, silver in the moonlight. You feel the subtle pull of the current beneath. There is no rush. You breathe, and with one soft push, the boat begins to move. Each stroke of the oar matches your breath. The sound of water against wood is gentle, rhythmic, timeless. Stars reflect on the surface, and the river carries you silently forward. You are not the driver. You are the companion. You and the river move together. In this, there is no fear of delay, no anxiety about the destination. The timing is perfect because it is the only moment that exists. This one now. Let that truth settle into you like moonlight on water. I move when it is time. I rest when it is time. Take one final deep breath. Exhale long and steady, letting go of urgency. Tonight, you are the ferryman, and the river, quiet, patient, wise, will always bring you home. Add a modern vignette. Trading floors and emergency rooms both teach timing by experience. A junior trader who forces a trade against market momentum burns capital. A senior ER doctor who waits for the last clarifying signs avoids unnecessary procedures. Both learn that timing is a discipline, not passivity. The ferryman's art scales to high-stakes environments include a cognitive strategy. Temporal distancing. When an urge to act feels urgent, step back and ask, will this matter in 24 hours, 6 months? That mental pause reframes impulsive energy and often reveals that the correct response is patience. A short guided practice, the 3-bell pause. When stress arises, set a timer for 60 seconds or imagine 3 bell chimes. In that minute, breathe and scan for external signals. Only act if the signal matches readiness. Most real-life crossings require this pause. Building it protects against rash moves that later require correction. Finish with a story of small timing victories. A composer waited an extra month before finishing a song. When he returned, he replaced the final chorus, turning a mediocre piece into a classic. Timing wasn't luck, it was trust. Every one of us carries something unseen. A memory, a regret, a name, a story. Some burdens are light, some heavy, and some so familiar we forget we're even holding them. We live bent under invisible stones, but there comes a point when the back grows tired and the question arises, must I still carry this? This is the practice of letting go, not erasing what happened, but releasing the constant need to hold it. The story of the 2 monks. 2 monks were traveling together on a long road after a heavy rain. They came to a river where a young woman stood unable to cross. Her silk robes would be ruined in the current. Without hesitation, the older monk lifted her in his arms, carried her across the water, set her down, bowed, and continued walking. The younger monk followed, silent but disturbed. Hours passed. Finally, the younger one burst out, "Brother, we are monks. We're not supposed to touch women. How could you carry her?" The elder smiled gently. "I put her down at the river," he said. "Why are you still carrying her?" The weight of the mind. We all know this feeling. Replaying old conversations, holding grudges, nursing wounds that time itself tried to heal. We say we want peace, yet we cling to the very thoughts that disturb it. Our suffering, more often than not, comes not from the event, but from our unwillingness to set it down. Modern psychology calls this rumination, the mind's habit of chewing the same thought again and again. Each repetition deepens the groove like water carving rock. To break the cycle, we don't need to suppress the thought. We need to stop feeding it. The older monk's wisdom was simple. Peace begins the moment we stop carrying what no longer exists. A story of the traveler and the stone. A man once journeyed through a mountain path. Halfway up the trail, he found a beautiful stone glittering in the sunlight. He picked it up and slipped it into his bag. At first it felt light, even precious. But as he climbed higher, the stone grew heavier. He began to resent it, yet he couldn't bring himself to let it go. It was too beautiful, too rare. By evening he was exhausted, staggering under the weight. At a cliff's edge, he finally stopped and asked himself, "What good is this stone if it's crushing me?" He took it out, looked one last time at its shimmer, and placed it gently on the ground. Then he walked away. Lighter, freer, still admiring the mountain's beauty with empty hands. This is the quiet power of renunciation, when we stop mistaking possession for fulfillment. The habit of holding on. Why do we cling? Because the mind confuses holding with safety. It believes that if we release our anger, we'll lose justice. If we release our sadness, we'll lose love. If we release control, we'll fall apart. But the truth is the opposite. Letting go is the only way space opens for new life to enter. Think of a clenched fist. You cannot receive anything new while your hand is closed. Only when you open it does life have room to offer something else. Buddhism calls this upadana, grasping the root of suffering. We cling to what is pleasant, resist what is unpleasant, and in doing so, we trap ourselves between craving and aversion. Freedom is found not by destroying desire, but by releasing attachment to its outcomes. A modern example. Imagine someone scrolling through old messages from a friend who no longer speaks to them. Each word reopens the wound, yet they keep reading, afraid that deleting means forgetting. But healing is not forgetting. Healing is remembering without being chained. When they finally press delete, not out of anger but acceptance. The silence that follows is not empty. It's spacious, like fresh air after a storm. That space is where peace begins. Meditation, the stone exercise. Let's try a simple practice. You can do this now, sitting or lying down. Close your eyes. Imagine yourself holding a stone in your hands. It represents something you've been carrying. A thought, a regret, a name, a wound. Feel its weight. Notice its temperature, its texture. You don't have to identify it in words. Just sense what it stands for. Now, with a slow inhale, acknowledge, I have carried this. Exhale and whisper quietly to yourself, I am ready to put it down. Picture yourself setting the stone gently on the ground. See how your hands feel lighter, your shoulders relax. You are still the same person, only less burdened. The stone remains on the path, but it no longer defines your journey. Each time you breathe, imagine walking farther away from it, not in denial, but in freedom. The parable of the student. In another old Zen tale, a young student complained to his teacher, Master, I feel weighed down. Every mistake, every failure, I carry them all. How do I let them go? The master handed him a large stone. Carry this, he said. The student obeyed, holding it as they walked through the village, then up the hill, then across a field. After an hour, his arms ached. Master, it's too heavy, he cried. The master smiled. Then why not put it down? The student stared, dumbfounded. But you told me to carry it. The teacher laughed. I told you to carry it, yes, but I never told you for how long. Why do you assume you must keep holding it? The student dropped the stone and suddenly understood. We suffer not because the world asks us to carry, but because we refuse to ask ourselves when to stop. Recognizing what you carry. Before we can release, we must recognize. Take a moment to name, silently or aloud, what you've been carrying. Is it a memory, a guilt, a dream that didn't unfold? Notice how it lives in your body, and maybe in the chest, the stomach, the throat. Simply observe. The act of recognition is already a form of letting go. Because once the unconscious becomes conscious, it starts to dissolve. Awareness is like sunlight on ice, a short reflection, the hands of water. There's a saying in Zen, to hold water, open your hands. Try to grasp water tightly and it slips through your fingers. Hold it gently and it stays. Life is like that. Relationships, success, peace, they all stay longer when we stop clutching. Letting go doesn't mean losing. It means loving with open hands. Why letting go helps us sleep. At night, the mind clings most fiercely. Unfinished conversations replay. Tasks whisper in the dark. This is why many people struggle to rest. Their bodies lie down, but their minds remain gripping. Meditation for sleep is essentially an act of release. Each breath becomes a gesture of trust. I can set this aside until morning. Science now confirms what monks knew centuries ago. Releasing rumination lowers heart rate, reduces cortisol, and invites deep sleep. Tonight before bed, you can practice the same. When thoughts arise, imagine placing each one on the riverbank like a small stone. You can return to them tomorrow or never. The river will carry them either way. The practice of gentle acceptance. Letting go doesn't mean pushing things away. That's just another form of clinging, resistance in disguise. True release comes through acceptance. Yes, this happened. Yes, it hurt. And yes, I am ready to live beyond it. Acceptance is not approval, it's honesty. It says this is what is without trying to rewrite the past. When you can face what is without tightening, peace arises naturally, like mist forming over a quiet pond. Meditation on the breathing through release. Try this breathing pattern tonight. Inhale. Notice what feels heavy in your chest. Pause. Silently say, it's okay to feel this. Exhale. Imagine the weight leaving with the breath. Rest. Sit in the brief stillness that follows. Repeat 3 times. Each cycle softens the inner grip a little more. A story of the empty backpack. A teacher once asked her students to bring a backpack filled with 1 stone for every resentment they carried. Some came with small bags, others dragged heavy ones. After walking a mile, their shoulders burned. The teacher said, "Every resentment you carry weighs like this. You think it's hidden, but your body remembers." Then she told them to empty their packs, 1 stone at a time, naming each as they threw it away. This is my anger toward myself. This is my jealousy. This is my fear. When they finished, the students stood straighter, breathing freely. One said, "Master, I feel light." She smiled. That's because you finally met yourself without baggage. Letting go is not spiritual poetry, it is physical truth. Practical contemplation. Ask yourself tonight, what am I still carrying that no longer needs to come with me? What thought, belief, or story has outlived its purpose? What am I afraid will happen if I truly set it down? Write your answers softly. Don't force insight. Just observe. Clarity comes like dawn, slowly, naturally, inevitably. Then write this sentence beneath it. I give myself permission to travel lighter. Closing visualization. Picture yourself walking along a quiet path at dusk. The sky glows violet. A small stream runs beside you. You carry a satchel filled with stones. With each breath, you take 1 stone out and place it gently in the water. It sinks with a soft sound and disappears beneath ripples. One by one, you let them go. Each one a thought, a worry, a pain. Your bag grows lighter. Your steps grow easier. Soon you are walking empty-handed, feeling the cool breeze on your skin. You look back. The river glimmers, carrying everything away. Nothing lost, nothing wasted, only transformed. Take a deep breath. Exhale slowly. Say quietly to yourself, I have carried enough. I choose to be free. Let the silence that follows be your teacher. In that silence, the river of life continues to flow, patient, gentle, endless. And you, lighter now, move with it. Add a cultural anecdote. Many traditions have rites of deposition, stones, letters, cloths, left at shrines to mark closure. Anthropologists note these rituals are effective because they externalize psychic load. You might create a personal ritual. Write the burden on paper and leave it somewhere symbolic, a riverbank, a tree, a drawer. a material act that leverages symbolic cognition. Practical psychotherapy note: acceptance and commitment. Therapy, ACT, uses diffusion techniques, naming thoughts rather than identifying with them, e.g., I am having the thought that, which reduces the thought's grip. Combine this with physical deposition and you produce both cognitive and somatic release. Add a new short parable: a mason collecting pebbles for a temple mosaic. He selected only those that fit the pattern and discarded the rest into the stream. He did not hoard all stones, he chose according to purpose. This combines discernment with release. Not all burdens are equal. Some deserve attention, others deserve burial. Finish with a guided practice. Create a drop box, a jar where you write one worry per slip and drop it in. At week's end, open and review with curiosity. Often you see themes and can choose targeted action. And very often you notice many items never return to your attention again. When the mind is tired, it doesn't always rest. Sometimes it wanders into old memories, things we wish we had done differently, words we wish we hadn't said, faces we still miss. This is the quiet ache of guilt and grief, the twin stones that rest at the bottom of the heart. Both come from love, guilt from the love that feels it has failed, grief from the love that has lost. But even love, when clung to too tightly, can drown us. To live again, we must learn how to let the pond of the heart become still once more. The parable of the pond. A young monk once came to his master, eyes filled with sorrow. "Master," he said, "I've done something I can't undo. Every night it haunts me. I try to meditate, but the image keeps rising like smoke. What should I do?" The master took him to a small pond behind the monastery. The water was still, reflecting the moon. "Take this stone," said the master, "and throw it into the pond." The monk did. Ripples spread across the surface, breaking the moon's reflection into 1,000 trembling fragments. "Now," said the master, "try to make the water still again." The monk stared helplessly at the widening ripples. "I can't," he said. "It's impossible." The master smiled. "So it is with the mind. The moment you throw the stone of regret, the water stirs. You cannot force it still again. But if you stop stirring, if you wait and breathe, it will settle on its own." The monk watched as the pond slowly calmed. The ripples faded. The moon returned, whole and clear. "See," said the master, "forgiveness is not control. It's patience. Understanding guilt. Guilt has its purpose. It shows we have a conscience, a sense of care. But when guilt turns into punishment, when it loops endlessly, it becomes suffering without wisdom. The Buddha taught that remorse should be like salt in water, enough to flavor insight, but not so much that it poisons the whole drink. Healthy guilt leads to awareness, to apology, to change. Unhealthy guilt just keeps us trapped at the edge of the pond, staring at ripples we made long ago. Ask yourself, is this guilt still teaching me something, or is it only punishing me? If it still teaches, listen and learn. If not, bow to it and let it dissolve. Because once the lesson is learned, the burden is no longer yours to carry. The story of the broken bowl. In one monastery, a novice accidentally broke the master's tea bowl, an old and priceless artifact. Terrified, he hid the pieces, but guilt gnawed at him. He couldn't sleep. Finally, days later, he confessed. "I broke your bowl," he said, trembling. "I'm sorry, I tried to fix it but failed." The master smiled and said, "Good. Then now you can begin your practice." The novice looked confused. "You're not angry?" "Why would I be?" said the master. The bowl was already broken. He saw the student's bewilderment and added, "Everything in this world is already broken, or will be. To cling to the illusion of permanence is the real mistake. You did nothing wrong that nature hadn't already planned." That night, the novice slept deeply for the first time in weeks. The art of self-forgiveness. Forgiving others is difficult. Forgiving ourselves can feel impossible. We keep revisiting the same scene, believing that enough punishment will make us worthy again. But remorse is not redemption. Understanding is. You cannot hate yourself into becoming better. You can only love yourself enough to change. To forgive yourself does not mean you excuse your actions. It means you accept your humanity. The same fragile, learning humanity you see in everyone else. In meditation, forgiveness begins not as a thought, but as a breath. I see my mistake. I forgive my mistake. I am still worthy of peace. Repeat these silently as you breathe. Let them settle deeper than words. Like roots drinking water from beneath the surface. Grief, the other stone. If guilt is the stone we throw, grief is the stone the world throws at us. We lose someone, something, some dream, and the pond of the heart ripples again. Grief is not an enemy to be conquered. It's a guest to be welcomed, honored, and then gently allowed to leave. When you suppress grief, it hides in the body, in the chest, in the throat, in the stomach. When you let it breathe, it moves through and transforms. There's a saying, tears are the way the heart speaks when words cannot. Each tear is a small baptism, washing away resistance, softening the soil so love can grow again. The story of the old woman in the river. There was once an old woman who lost her son in war. Every day she came to the river sitting in silence. People pitied her, but she never wept. One day a monk passed by and asked, "Why do you come here each day?" She replied, "Because I am afraid if I stop coming I will forget him." The monk nodded, then knelt and cupped a handful of water, letting it fall back into the river. "Do you see how it returns?" he asked. "The river doesn't keep what it loves. It lets it flow, and that's why it never runs dry." The woman stared at the current. The next day she returned, and for the first time she cried. From that day on, she still came to the river, but her visits became softer, her grief lighter. She had learned that remembering is not the same as clinging. Meditation, the pond within. Close your eyes. Imagine the surface of a small pond inside your chest, clear, calm, shimmering in the moonlight. Now think of something that still stirs you, guilt, loss, or longing. Visualize it as a pebble resting on the shore. With compassion, pick it up and drop it into the water. Watch the ripples spread. Let them move freely. Don't try to stop them. Breathe. Each inhale says, "It's okay." Each exhale says, "It will settle." Gradually, the ripples fade. The pond grows still again. In its reflection, you see not pain, but clarity. The quiet recognition that everything changes, and that change is not your enemy. Grief and love. You grieve only for what you have loved. Grief then is proof of love's depth, and love, even when it seems to end, never truly disappears. It just changes form. When you can see grief as love without an object, it softens. It becomes prayer, gratitude, memory. So tonight, if you feel the ache of missing someone or something, don't push it away. Whisper instead, "Thank you for having been here. I release you now." Let the heart breathe and feel that person, that time, that dream. Become part of the wider life around you. Modern psychology and grief. In modern research, psychologists speak of integrated grief. Not forgetting, but living fully while remembering. They found that allowing emotions to move freely actually rewires the brain, reducing anxiety and depression. When we meditate on impermanence, acknowledging that loss is part of life, the nervous system begins to release its constant vigilance and tension. In other words, understanding impermanence doesn't make us cold. It makes us whole. It returns us to the rhythm of the world, tides that come and go, seasons that bloom and fade, love that transforms but never vanishes. The pond of compassion. When you forgive yourself, the pond clears. When you forgive others, the pond deepens. When you forgive the world, the pond becomes the sky. The Buddha called this karuna, compassion, the softening of the heart toward all beings, including oneself. It's not sentimental, it's strong, like water that can shape mountains. Each act of compassion, even a breath of it, helps restore balance to the whole pond of human suffering. Meditation, the heart is water. Place a hand on your chest. Feel the gentle rhythm beneath. Say silently, "This heart is a pond." Inhale, water still. Exhale, ripples fade. If guilt or grief arises, don't push them away. Whisper to them, "I see you. You can rest now." The pond doesn't need to drain to become pure. It only needs to stop being stirred. A closing reflection. Forgiveness and letting go are not one-time events. They are daily acts, as ordinary and sacred as breathing. You may find that the same memory returns, that the same ache revisits. That's all right. Healing moves in circles, not lines. Each time you meet it with gentleness, it hurts less and teaches more. One day you'll look into the pond of your heart and realize the stones are still there at the bottom, but they no longer disturb the water. They've become part of the foundation, quiet, unmoving, supporting the reflection above. Take a breath now, slow and full. Exhale with the thought, "Nothing needs to be different for me to be at peace." You are not broken. You are water learning to be still again. Deepen the emotional texture. Guilt often arrives with a small inner judge. Grief comes with an inner witness. Distinguish them. Guilt asks, "What did I do?" Grief asks, "What did I lose?" Both need distinct responses: repair when possible, ritual and remembrance when not. Add a clinical concept. Complicated grief benefits from meaning-making, integrating the loss into a life story rather than deleting or immortalizing it. One technique: write a 2-paragraph letter to the person or event you mourn. 1 paragraph of sorrow, 1 paragraph acknowledging what it taught you. This integrates rather than freezes emotion. Include an additional parable. A gardener buried an old tool in his soil. Over seasons, the metal corroded but added minerals that nourished the roots. He did not throw away the past. He composted it into the future. That composting is grief work. Add a longer guided sleep practice. Before sleep, sit with the memory for 2 to 3 minutes, then place it in an imaginary boat that drifts across a lake. Watch the boat until it's a dot. This imagery exploits the mind's narrative capacity to create a psychological boundary between you and the memory, enabling restful sleep. When the mind is full, there is no space for wisdom. When the cup is overflowing, even the purest tea will spill. Zen calls this shoshin, the beginner's mind. It means approaching every moment as if for the first time, open, curious, without the armor of "I already know." In the beginner's mind, possibilities are infinite. In the expert's mind, they are few. The story of the overflowing cup. A famous scholar once visited a Zen master, eager to discuss enlightenment. The scholar was brilliant, fluent in scriptures, philosophy, logic. As soon as he sat down, he began to lecture the master on his understanding of Zen, the nature of reality, the structure of mind, the mechanics of meditation. The master listened silently. After a while, he began to pour tea into the scholar's cup. He poured until the cup was full, then kept pouring. The tea overflowed, spilling onto the table, then to the floor. "Stop, it's overflowing," the scholar cried. "Yes," said the master calmly. "Like this cup, your mind is full. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty it?" The scholar fell silent. For the first time, he listened, truly listened. The meaning of Shoshin. Shoshin is not ignorance. It is not pretending we know nothing. It is the state of being deeply awake to the freshness of each moment, knowing that what we think we know is never the whole truth. Children live in this state naturally. They touch, smell, taste, and wonder. They don't rush to label, they experience. As adults, we replace wonder with certainty. We mistake labels for life itself. We stop seeing and begin merely recognizing. Zen practice invites us to return to that original innocence. Not childishness, but childlikeness. Clear eyes, open heart, curious mind. In Shoshin, there is no should or must. There is only what is. And in that presence, even the simplest act, drinking tea, breathing, listening, becomes sacred. Why knowing blocks seeing. When we believe we already know, the mind stops paying attention. We stop seeing the color of the sky, hearing the tone of a friend's voice, feeling the texture of the moment. It's like walking the same road every day and forgetting to notice the trees. The world becomes familiar, and therefore invisible. But when we practice beginner's mind, even the ordinary becomes extraordinary again. The cup is not a cup. It's this unique shape of clay in this exact light, in this single unrepeatable moment. To live this way is to be reborn 1,000 times a day. The practice of emptying. To empty the cup doesn't mean to erase knowledge. It means to loosen your grip on it, to hold your learning lightly, knowing it can change. Try this. Sit quietly. Imagine your mind as a cup. Notice what fills it. Thoughts, plans, judgments, fears, opinions. Each one is a drop of tea, swirling, mixing, sometimes overflowing. Now imagine gently pouring some of it out. You don't have to empty it completely, just enough to make space. In that space, breathe. With every inhale, say silently, I am open. With every exhale, I let go of what I think I know. Slowly, the mind settles. In that stillness, perception sharpens. You begin to see what was always there. The simplicity beneath complexity. A story of Master Hakuin. Zen Master Hakuin was once falsely accused by a village woman of fathering her child. When the angry townspeople confronted him, he simply said, "Is that so?" He accepted the baby without protest and raised it with compassion. Months later, when the woman confessed the truth and cleared his name, the villagers returned, apologizing. Hakuin only replied, "Is that so?" His peace came not from indifference, but from not knowing, from living without attachment to reputation, praise, or blame. When you let go of needing to be right, life stops being a courtroom. You stop defending and start experiencing. You begin to see that every label, good or bad, success or failure, is temporary, like clouds drifting across a clear sky. The freedom of not knowing. There's a quiet liberation in admitting, I don't know. It opens the door for learning, humility, and wonder. In Zen, not knowing is considered the most intimate form of wisdom. Because to not know is to be present, to be alive to what's unfolding, not trapped in old stories about it. Every great artist, scientist, or teacher has touched this truth. Discovery happens not when you assert what you know, but when you surrender to curiosity. Try whispering it to yourself. I don't know, and that's okay. Notice the space that opens when certainty fades. That space is peace. Daily practice. Seeing anew. To cultivate beginner's mind, start small. When you wake up, notice something in your room as if for the first time. The light on the wall, the sound of a bird, the feeling of your breath. Don't name it. Just see it. When you meet someone, pretend you've never met. Look at them as if they might still surprise you, because they can. No one ever steps into the same self twice. When you eat, taste each bite as if it's the first fruit you've ever had. When you breathe, feel the miracle of air entering the lungs as if it's brand new. These are small acts of awakening, the doorways to a larger silence. The beginner's mind and the ego. The ego thrives on certainty. It wants to know who it is, where it stands, what others think. But the more tightly we define ourselves, the less room there is for growth. The beginner's mind, on the other hand, is fluid. It doesn't cling to identity. It allows transformation. It says, I am this now, but I may not be tomorrow. And that's beautiful. In that openness, ego softens. We become less defensive, more kind, more curious. As the Zen saying goes, when I let go of who I am, I become what I might be. Meditation. Returning to beginner's mind. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself as a child again, before names, before success, before fear. Remember the first time you saw rain or fireflies or stars. There was no need to understand, only to marvel. Can you feel that sense of wonder now? That's Shoshin. Now bring that same openness to this very breath. Don't analyze it. Don't judge its depth or speed. Just notice. breath happening, life happening. Each inhale, new. Each exhale, gone forever. That's the rhythm of existence, creation and dissolution again and again without resistance. Zen and the unlearning of knowledge. A student once asked a Zen teacher, "What is enlightenment?" The teacher replied, "When you stop adding to what is." Knowledge is useful, but it's also heavy. It can make us forget the simple truth. We don't live in theories. We live in moments. When you unlearn what you think should happen, life begins to surprise you again. And in surprise, there is joy, a moment of sleep meditation. As you prepare for rest tonight, let yourself practice beginner's mind in sleep. Forget the concept of trying to fall asleep. Forget the thought, "I must relax." Just lie down and be curious. Notice what it feels like to be here. The weight of the blanket, the sound of your breath, the way the darkness holds you gently. You've never experienced this exact night before. Even if you've slept 1,000 times, this moment is entirely new. Let that awareness soften you. Let it become the lullaby that carries you into dreamless peace. Closing reflection. To empty the cup is to make room for life to pour in again. To live with beginner's mind is to keep the heart young even as the body ages. It is to walk through the world not as a judge but as a guest. Grateful, curious, awake. Take a slow breath, exhale gently. Say quietly to yourself, "I know nothing, and in this nothing I find everything." Let the words dissolve into silence. The tea is warm, the cup is empty, and you, open, awake, are ready for the final lesson, impermanence. Add an historical aside. Many Zen masters used arts, tea ceremony, ink painting, archery, not as crafts, but as mind training. Shoshin is cultivated not merely by mental exercises, but through embodied repetition that erodes arrogance. Mention the Japanese tea ceremony, chado, as an example. Each motion is performed as if new, cultivating a refined beginner's attention. Add a practical exercise. The first taste. Each morning take one food item, a slice of fruit, a bite of bread. Close your eyes and spend 3 minutes noticing texture, sweetness, acidity, temperature, as if you have never tasted anything before. That micro-practice rewires habituation circuits and refreshes sensory life. Also add a caution. Beginner's mind is not perpetual naivety. It's a temporary reset that allows you to receive new information without defensiveness. Use it in high-stakes conversations when you find yourself insisting on being right. Try 1 minute of real listening with the intention to learn one tiny fact you didn't know before. All things change. That is the first and final truth of existence. Everything you can touch, love, or name. One day, it will pass. The flower blooms and fades. The breath comes and goes. The sun rises and sets. Impermanence is not a flaw in the design. It is the design. The story of the cracked cup. A Zen master once lifted his favorite teacup and said to his students, "This cup is already broken." They looked puzzled. The cup was perfectly whole. He smiled. When I understand that this cup is already broken, I enjoy it fully. When I drink from it, I appreciate its beauty. If it slips from my hand and shatters, I say, "Ah, of course." He paused, then added softly, "Knowing it's already broken makes every moment with it precious." This is the heart of impermanence, not sadness but appreciation. When we stop expecting forever, we begin to see the miracle of now, the nature of change. The Buddha taught, "All compounded things are impermanent." When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. Everything that is born must die. Every beginning contains its ending. Every meeting carries within it the seed of parting. But impermanence is not cruelty. It is mercy. It allows the world to renew itself. It allows the broken to become whole again in new forms. Without impermanence, there would be no birth, no art, no growth, no dawn after night. Change is not the enemy of life. It is life. A story of the falling leaf. Once a monk was walking through the forest at the beginning of autumn. He watched a single golden leaf detach from its branch and drift gently down. He caught it in his hand and whispered, "And you have fulfilled your purpose." The leaf did not resist the fall. It danced. The monk realized if the leaf had clung to the branch, it would have withered and spoiled the tree. By letting go, it made room for new life to grow in spring. He bowed to the leaf and continued walking, lighter, wiser, free. The lesson of the seasons. Nature is the great teacher of impermanence. The tide never complains that it must leave the shore. The moon never resists its own waning. The tree does not grieve its leaves. It trusts their return. We too can live like this, learning to love deeply and let go gently. To live without clinging is not to be cold. It is to be fully alive in each unfolding moment. It's to say, this too is beautiful, because it will not last. The fear of endings. Many people fear endings, of relationships, youth, success, life itself. But look closely. What you call ending is often just a transformation. The river doesn't die when it reaches the sea, it becomes the ocean. When a candle burns out, its light doesn't vanish. It joins the air as warmth, as memory. When someone you love leaves, their presence remains in the shape they carved in your heart. You can never hold what changes, but you can love it while it's here. That is enough. A meditation, the river of time. Close your eyes. Imagine standing by a slow river under moonlight. The water moves gently, carrying leaves, twigs, stars reflected on its surface. Now imagine each leaf as a moment of your life. Some bright, some dark, all drifting downstream. You can try to grab one, but it slips away. You can try to stop the current, but it keeps flowing. Take a deep breath, exhale softly. Whisper to yourself, I don't need to hold the river, I only need to flow with it. The river doesn't fear its destination. It trusts the journey, so can you. A story of the potter's bowl. A potter once made a beautiful bowl. He admired its symmetry, its perfect glaze. But one day, while moving it from the kiln, it cracked. Instead of throwing it away, he filled the crack with golden lacquer. A Japanese art called kintsugi, the practice of repairing with gold. The bowl, once ordinary, became more beautiful for having been broken. Our lives are like that bowl. We too are made more radiant by the gold of experience, the cracks of loss, failure, and love. Impermanence does not ruin us. It reveals our luminous core, understanding death without fear. Death too is part of this river. To fear it is to fear change itself. Zen doesn't deny the sadness of parting. It simply refuses to add resistance to it. It teaches that dying is not the opposite of living, but one of its natural movements. When you understand that everything changes, fear softens. You start to see continuity and transformation. Like a wave returning to the sea without loss of water. The self you think you are is already changing. Breath by breath, cell by cell, thought by thought. So why cling to what never stays the same? A reflection on gratitude. The beauty of impermanence is gratitude. If everything lasted forever, we would stop noticing. Because things fade, we treasure them. Look around you. The small details, the flicker of candlelight, the sound of rain, the warmth of breath. Each is temporary, and that's why it's precious. Say quietly, thank you for existing in this moment. And then let it pass. The practice of gentle goodbye. When something leaves your life, a person, a stage, a version of yourself, practice saying goodbye softly, not with anger, but with appreciation. Try this small ritual. Breathe in, remembering what it gave you. Breathe out, releasing what it took. Whisper, go in peace. You'll find that in each goodbye there is also a hello waiting, a space for something new. Meditation. The candle. Visualize a candle burning before you. Its flame flickers with the breath of the air. Now imagine slowly lowering a glass dome over it, watching as the flame dances once more. Then fades. Feel the quiet that follows. That silence is not emptiness, it's the space where all things rest before becoming new again. Every night when you fall asleep, you practice this. a small rehearsal of impermanence. You let the light of waking consciousness fade, trusting that it will rise again with dawn. You die into rest and are reborn into morning, the gift of impermanence. Because things end, we learn tenderness. Because moments pass, we learn presence. Because life is short, we learn to love. The wise do not chase immortality, they embrace transience. They see that perfection is not in duration, but in awareness. They love with full attention, even knowing it will vanish. Perhaps because they know it will vanish. That is real courage, to open the heart to a world that will break it again and again and still say yes. A night meditation, dissolving into sleep. Lie down now. Let your body feel the weight of gravity, a soft reminder that even you are part of the earth's gentle pull. Breathe deeply. Each breath out, imagine a leaf falling, a wave receding, a star dimming. All natural, all peaceful. Each breath in, imagine a new leaf budding, a wave forming, a star igniting. This is the pulse of existence, endings and beginnings woven together in silence. As your body relaxes, let go of the need to control tomorrow. Let the night take you like the river takes its waves. You are safe in the current of impermanence. Whisper softly. Everything changes, everything returns. I am at peace with the flow. Sleep comes not when you hold on, but when you finally release. Let go now. Let the world take care of itself. The stars fade into your dreams. The river continues without you rowing. And somewhere the master's cup rests quietly, already broken, already perfect. Enrich with kintsugi as a longer metaphor in modern psychology. Studies on post-traumatic growth show many people report gains, resilience, appreciation after loss. The gold in kintsugi is like psychological integration. The wound becomes a source of beauty. Add a bedtime micro-ritual. Each night, say aloud 3 small things you were grateful for that day and 1 small thing you release, a worry, an expectation. The mixture of gratitude and letting go primes sleep for consolidation and emotional regulation. Conclude with a short vow. Suggest the listener place their hand over their heart and say, I will love what is here and let it go when it must leave. This vow is both anchor and release.